Rolling.
What's up, Jouster?
We've been talking a lot about a lot of different things.
True. We talk about superheroes.
Okay.
But not just about superheroes, but how they work and the theory behind them.
So, but that doesn't explain why you haven't left my house.
I like it here. I'm here to stay.
That is his superpower.
That is my superpower.
So yeah, if you want to listen to what makes heroes tick, how they work, and the science behind them, and actually one of the things that we talk about is how close we actually are in achieving those superpowers. Yes. So yeah, listen to our podcast.
And I won't leave till we finish all superhero powers.
Yes. All the ones that have been made, all that will be made.
And I also won't leave till everyone in the world hears this, so like and share.
So please, listen. Get him out of my house. Makings of a Hero every other week.
Every other week.
Come and listen. All right. So, just so you listeners know, we do have a thunderstorm going on outside. So, if you hear thunder, lightning, or you hear one of us scream in horrible pain, watch our first episode of Manual of Miscellaneous Magics and you'll discover why. So,
can they really watch it though?
They can
yes,
listen.
they can watch the device through which your voice
is coming through.
is coming to narrate this.
That's true. I am the narrator.
All right. So tonight we're talking about the Last Airbender
Show, not the movie.
Yes,
the movie
the show.
sucked.
Well, we're talking about the concept. So that does kind of include the movie, but we won't be talking about the movie.
You can bring
So-
it up,
Well, it's
but we
clear that the director never saw the show, so we probably don't even have to talk about the movie.
Yeah. So I am Joster.
I'm Xana. Guinevere.
I'm Stan, and I'm a writer.
Sora.
And I'm Joster.
You are.
I said that already.
Yeah.
It's come full circle.
Yes.
It's okay. Joster's
So-
not that important.
Lee is our special guest for the
Oh,
day.
great. Tonight we have Stan and Lee.
Welcome. Oh,
He didn't spit at me.
so getting into The Last Airbender. This is not a topic that I know a lot about. So we're going to be relying primarily on you five for our information. What did you think of the concept?
Actually, they actually go more in depth on the history behind bending and stuff in the newer show, The Legend of Korra, which that is pretty epic. But from the original show, my favorite thing was how each element that you can bend also has like a sub element or something you can do, like a special.
Alternative,
Like a sub-
Something that's more focused.
Yeah,
alternative style.
an alternative style of bending. So, like, waterbenders can heal and blood bend. Airbenders can fly.
Yeah, and like ridiculously advanced airbenders can learn to fly. Fire has lightning.
And earthbending, you can also do
Metal.
lava and metal.
Mhm.
Which lava doesn't come in until this Korra, but...
Although, actually, we do see lava bending in the first series because the Avatar before Aang, Aang was the main character of the series, so the Avatar before him, we see him lava bend when he's in like full-scale Avatar state.
Roku.
Yes, Roku. Avatar Roku.
I was afraid to say it because I thought, for some reason, I thought I was mistaking it with the
device.
The device, yeah.
Actually, we see it twice now that I think of it, because we see Roku do it. We see Roku lava bend, who incidentally was a firebender before he became the Avatar.
Right.
So we see him do it at like a Fire Nation volcanic island temple thing, and in his history, in a certain episode where he shows his history. And then we also see Avatar Kyoshi, who was before Roku, lava bend, where she separates the land masses.
Oh, I didn't know that's what that was.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a
She
while.
earth bent to crack the land, and then she lava bent to separate it completely. But at the same time, both of those times you see their eyes glow, so they're in like full powered Avatar mode.
Yeah. I just didn't know that. They were in the. Yeah, you're saying they're in the Avatar state.
The Avatar state, yeah.
So what is the Avatar state?
to put it the way they describe it in the series, it's the combination of all the past avatars. Like it's
like
the avatar,
it's the spiritual combination of all of them, and like you have all the power of all the avatars ever.
which on that topic, it actually brings in some of the Asian culture, not just the martial arts styles, but the avatar is based on the concept of reincarnation.
Okay.
So each new avatar is the spiritual reincarnation of the previous one.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Like in The Legend of Korra, they actually base it on the light spirit.
But while it is their most powerful state, they're also the most vulnerable,
Yeah.
because if they
Yeah.
die while they're in the Avatar state, the Avatar ceases to exist.
Yeah, it cuts off the reincarnation cycle.
See, that's one concept that I think is overused, is when you're most powerful, you're weakest, but it actually makes sense in regards to this realm, because like when you're exposed to that much power, it's going to weaken you. So that makes sense.
But at the same time, it's the fact that all of their spiritual essences are combined in that one moment.
Yeah.
To
You
eliminate the vessel, you eliminate the whole thing.
Yeah, and what it is they like. I think essentially they can bend all elements at once in this state.
Yeah, because the very last scene, the very final scene of the fight between
Aang and Ozai.
Aang and Ozai, you see Aang's encased in air with fire, rock, and
water
swirling
him.
around that at the same time.
Which is really cool because there's one scene where he actually turns a rock into a machine gun.
Nice.
Pretty much.
Because you see him do this little hand gesture and then just little pebbles fly out of a rock. It's great. It's really, really cool.
That would be cool.
Yeah, but I think one of my favorite parts about the whole series was how they took these real life martial arts styles, 4 different styles, and adapted them into these different styles of bending. Because we know that the earth bending is very based on defense. They have a solid stance, and I mean you really can't break them.
Right.
Even culturally, they're unmovable.
They're
And-
grounded.
When we were kind of talking about this subject before recording, we talked about that. You look at the Earth, because you're Earth bending. You look at the Earth and how much it can survive, how much it can withstand. It has meteors that come in and strike it, and it does just fine. The creatures on it, not so much, but the Earth itself is a very solid state. So.
One thing, every time I watch the show, I find it interesting that they don't really focus on this aspect, but there are scenes where when they earthbend, you actually see the scar of, when they, one of the things that they do is they actually slam their foot on the ground to force stone out of the ground. What happens after? You have just left a hole in the ground. But they never focus on the aftermath of certain bending.
Yeah.
I just mentioned Avatar Kyoshi. She created an island.
Where did that guy come from?
She created an entire island from one massive continent.
Earth bending, making stars.
It's gone.
Okay. But there's another scene. It's one of my favorite scenes with Toph, who's one of the main earthbenders in the series. She actually teaches Aang, the Avatar, earthbending. She's blind, so she actually sees through earthbending. She feels
uses
the
her
vibrations. She feels the vibrations of the earth.
She calls him Twinkle Toes because he walks lightly.
When you talk about Toph being blind, like the episode where they're in the desert, she doesn't like being in the desert because she can't see because it's so
It's
loose.
like static.
Yeah, it's like
Can't-
static to
yeah.
her. So
Yeah,
she
that
doesn't
makes
feel
sense.
she doesn't feel the vibrations like she would if she were on solid Earth. Because when they got to the giant beehive, because they finally found a piece of solid rock, she's like, she was just happy.
Land.
Yeah,
And she starts making a rock angel.
When everyone else goes into the library that the owl created, she's talking to Appa, and she's like, I just don't like it because it's so loose and shifty. It makes everything look all fuzzy. And then Appa, he growls at her because
He
she
is-
said,
Not that there's anything
Fuzzy.
wrong with Fuzzy. Appa,
yeah.
Appa is Aang's...
Flying bison.
I don't want to call him a pet, because he's not really a pet. He's more of a companion.
Animal guy.
But yeah, an animal guide. So he is a giant 6-legged flying bison.
That pays no attention to carrying capacity.
Joster's just like dying over here because he doesn't know anything about the show.
Yeah. But that goes into another topic that I really liked about the series is all the unique animals, because you talked about the giant beehive in that desert episode. Yeah. They weren't just bees; they were giant vulture wasps.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
They had the head of a vulture and the body of a giant hornet.
That's horrifying.
Yes.
Back when he was talking about earthbending, I remembered the Earth Kingdom city. The main one is called Ba Sing Se, and one of the characters actually explains what that means, and it's unmovable city. And they don't call it Na Sing Se, or impenetrable city, because Na Sing Se would be penetrable city. That's not what they're
it's
about.
It's funny because it's supposed to be like a moment of comic relief, and no one laughs at his comment.
One of my favorite Earthbenders, other than Toph, was King Boomy.
Yes.
I love him.
Yes.
Just because he's just out
And
there.
he's so
wild.
quirky.
He literally, they locked him in a box to where he couldn't move anything except for his head, and he freaking just uses his jaw to like earthbend.
Yes.
Like he's sitting there like earthbending by moving his head in random directions.
Yep.
And he's just trapped in this box like a coffin with his face sticking out of it. He's like, I'm okay!
To which Aang comments like, wait, you can earthbend? Well, they didn't cover my face. I think my favorite part of King Boomy was his laugh. He laughs like a psychotic, crazy person, but he's like one of the most epic earthbending masters in the whole Avatar universe.
He's epic.
Yeah.
I liked a lot of stuff about it. I liked all the advanced forms of bending of each element, and the comic relief was good too.
Yeah.
All the random comments by Katara's brother Sokka. Yeah.
Yes, he was the comic relief of the show.
I kind of feel bad for him as a character because that's what everyone sees him as. Because he wanted to contribute more than just to the comic relief.
Mm-hmm.
Like he couldn't bend. All he had was his boomerang and his space sword. My space sword.
But the way they developed him as a character, I mean, yes, he started as the comic relief, but as the second season progressed, you see just how important and how epic of a character he becomes. And then in the third season, when they're in the Fire Nation, they're having to be incognito because, they're in enemy territory. And though he still fulfills the role of comic relief, his character develops so much because there's that one episode where they're like, we know what you're missing, Sokka. We all had our own teachers. You need a master. You need someone to teach you a new skill. And so they go and they find a swordsman. If I can think.
Fire Nation.
Well, not just the Fire Nation, but he's a master of swordplay.
Yeah.
And he teaches Sokka not only how to use a sword, but how to forge a sword.
And he teaches it out of space rock.
Yeah, he makes it out of a meteor. But not only that, but he teaches Sokka not from a combat standpoint. He teaches him about balance, about using your senses, about being able to see what's around you. He expands Sokka's vision as a warrior.
And I've taken martial arts, and very little of it is actually fighting. There's a very it's 85% self-awareness and 15% punches and kicks and grabs. If you go to like an American dojo, that's all they do is punches, kicks, so on and so forth. And that's the trouble we're getting into with these fighting styles is they're going into MMA, which is mixed martial arts.
Yeah, there's no more Mr. Miyagi.
Yeah, there's no more Mr. Miyagi, and it's all combat. It's all beating the other person up. And they get into these rings and they just slaughter each other. And that's the whole point, is you want to try and knock the other person out. The problem is you're harboring anger. You're harboring frustration. You're harboring all of these feelings of, this person is my opponent and I must defeat them.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what martial arts is about. Martial arts has the emphasis on art.
Yep.
It's what you do with yourself not what you do to the other person.
Which is really cool because the through line of the entire Avatar series is not the bending.
Mhm.
I mean, that's kind of the cool background of it. But the through line of this whole series is balance.
Mhm.
Like, the reason they're going up against the Fire Nation is because the royal family has thrown the world out of balance.
And I like that. I like that the emphasis is not... Because in the movie, that was a large part of the emphasis was the combat, the battle.
Because it's the cool stuff that keeps an audience going.
Yeah. Except that it really doesn't. It's just something that people think.
Mhm.
It's the special effects. It's how can we make this look really cool? No, tell a good story. Draw people in with that. Because that's what The Hobbit does.
Uh-huh.
Yes, they had their special effects.
Yeah, Smaug was amazing.
Yeah, he was. But he was only a small part of it.
I'm pretty sure that's why everybody went to see the second movie.
But in the second movie, he dies within like 10 minutes.
Third movie. But yeah.
Yeah, third movie.
Yeah, he's literally only in the movie for like 5-10 minutes.
Now, they did have the special effects of the gold, which I really liked that. But that totally wasn't real. But,
You know, 5 pounds of it might have been.
The rogue and Joster.
yes. But getting back to Avatar. So the overall concept, what did you guys think? Like the idea of using martial arts to control elements.
I don't know that it was so much control, so much as a focus. It was like I had mentioned they actually studied 4 different actual real world styles of martial arts for each different bending style.
Right.
I think they picked the right ones for him too.
They did.
Well, because they looked at each aspect of each element and thought of which kind of movements would go along with, like earthbending, you're talking about defense and strength and being grounded. Airbending, you're talking about being light and being movable easily.
Yeah,
and fire is all about destruction more.
Aggression.
But like you said this once, it's alive.
Mhm.
Fire's alive, it's always moving, whereas everything else doesn't really move. Like, because fire can move across buildings and forests and destroy, whereas earth, wind, water really can't. Water's moving sometimes, but it's not alive.
But it doesn't consume things like
Yeah,
fire does.
exactly.
And the styles with water, one of their main focuses isn't attack; it's redirection.
Yeah.
They take their opponent's energy and turn it against them.
And one of the things that we had talked about at one point was the fact that you look at a river,
Mm-hmm.
and the reason they have to take so long to build the dam is because water builds up a lot of pressure, and if the larger the surface, the more power water has against it. So if you have a tree that's crossing a river, there's a lot of pressure against that tree because it's a large object. So it takes its own strength and turns it against itself. A mass flood in a river can do massive amounts of damage. I've seen
And when
bridges
all that
collapse.
power is released,
Mhm.
because we see that back to the Avatar state concept, we see that
Mhm.
in this show because Aang, he's technically 12 years old, but he encased himself in ice for 100 years because of the Avatar state protecting himself.
Right.
So he was like under the ocean in a ball of ice for 100 years. So he has a lot of history that he doesn't know, and as he finds out things that have happened, a lot of that pressure is released when his Avatar spirit kind of surfaces.
When you talk about fire, like you said, it's alive. It actively seeks out and consumes things. Fire can jump.
Mm-hmm.
Fire can, there's not much that can withstand fire. It's actually, fire is used to destroy and melt pretty much everything. Steel can be melted. You just need enough fire. Earth, in general, Earth runs off of fire. There's a core of lava underneath the Earth that is constantly. That's what allows the core to rotate independently, which creates the magnetic field that makes the Earth run. So
it's fire.
Yeah. So fire has so much power to it, but it's so easy to lose control of.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I like about the firebending is how, like, they're gaining control of it over it without letting it consume them. Because I know one time we talked about how like some firebenders actually just went crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Azula being one of them.
I was gonna say,
Zhao.
yeah, I was gonna say that they actually have an episode, basically showing that how firebending can get out of control.
Yeah.
Because this was like Aang's first firebending lesson, and he's sitting there with a leaf, and it's got a little ember in the middle of it, and he's got to keep the ember from spreading instead of letting it catch fire.
Yep.
And so when he lets it catch fire and he plays with the fire, that's when he burns Katara, and that's also when she finds out she has healing powers with her waterbending. But
But that is a really neat concept, and that's one of the things that is lacking from a lot of present day with the Avengers in the Avengers Age of Ultron. One of the things that they portray is you've got to let loose. You've got to expand yourself. You've got to be more than you are. So in X-Men Apocalypse, they kind of delve into that a little bit too, where basically, they've got this huge opponent, and in order to defeat him, they have to unleash the full measure of their power. And that's something that's portrayed a lot, because in society we repress ourselves a lot. And so in these movies, they try and push you to be more, do more. But you have to maintain that control, because once you lose that control, going back to the MMA fighters, you can kill someone.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a good thing. Learn restraint, not repression. Because repression is dangerous. Repression is
the water behind the dam.
Yeah, exactly. But learning restraint is learning how to direct the flow, so that you are strong, but you're not holding back either, or you're not just kind of letting it go wherever.
Mm-hmm. Which is cool with the firebending, because obviously every style of bending would need like a center.
Mm-hmm.
With firebending, back to the control thing, the way that they center themselves is through breathing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not only does air fuels fire.
So in a sense, you're saying that all of them are airbenders.
No, but I mean, in order to fuel their inner fire, they have to focus on their breathing. And what do we know about, taking deep, calm breaths? It helps us calm down, it centers us, and helps us actually...
What did you say?
I said I know nothing about that.
And it helps us kind of refocus our drive and our fire, if you will.
So there's a really interesting exercise, and I heard about this at one point, and I tried it, and I use it pretty much every night. You take a breath in, and you're focusing on your toes. And as you breathe out, you relax your toes. And then you breathe in, you focus on the balls of your feet. And as you breathe out, you relax the balls of your feet. I can't get more than up to about my thighs before I'm asleep, because it's a calming exercise.
Mm-hmm.
It's focusing your mind on a particular area, and it's breathing. That's literally all you're doing. Your muscles are actually already kind of relaxed, but it's the mental process, and it focuses on breathing.
And we completely got off track.
Yeah, right.
Concept.
That's the point of a podcast, right?
Something about when you're saying that waterbenders are using their opponent's energy against them, and they're redirecting everything. In firebending, it's more about like aggression, that's how they portray it. But in the episode where the uncle is trying to teach Zuko how to redirect lightning, he's bringing in all the other elements and kind of making it sound like Avatar stuff.
Yeah, he's bringing in aspects of the other types of bending.
Mm-hmm.
It's like saying you can use this knowledge to improve your own bending.
Yeah. He actually developed the technique of lightning redirection by studying waterbenders.
Right.
Yeah. And it's interesting because if you think about it, if you were to combine how you bend in different
Styles.
the different styles, if you use that on every single section, then it could become powerful and more controlling. Like, you can control them better.
Mhm.
And it's interesting how the firebending is more about aggression, but the uncle uses it in a more waterbendy way to make it better.
I really like that concept too, because the entire world is all interconnected, right? It's the whole Lion King circle of life thing.
Or like Pandora, it's a huge brain.
Yeah.
So fire consumes air. That's how it burns. Without air, fire can't burn. Water consumes fire, puts it out completely. Earth soaks up water.
Mhm.
Air moves the earth. Like, air can carve like dunes in the sand.
Oh,
So-
there in the scene that Sora mentioned earlier, where Aang was surrounded by all the elements in that last episode. There's actually a scene where he sends out a giant gust of wind against a huge, massive, monolithic pillar of stone.
Mhm.
And because he's in the Avatar state and he's at the peak of his power, this wind just blasted at such an angle that he just erodes away
Yep.
all the earth in like 5 seconds. Which
So-
leaves a little tiny sliver, then it just like topples over like a sawn tree.
So it's really interesting seeing the way that they can all interact and how you can learn from each one of them how to better use your own element.
Mhm.
We're going to go through real quick and just give a general overall what you thought of it. I'm kind of leaning away from the rating of 1 to 10 just because it's really hard to put some of these things onto a scale. So basically, overall, was it good? Is it worth watching? And have you heard from people that they also enjoyed it? More particularly, is there one thing about it that you really enjoyed?
I really enjoyed, like, out of all of the things, my favorite thing was the comedy. Like, and I still can't believe nobody has said, "My cabbages!"
Cactus juice.
Cactus
It'll
juice.
quench you.
It'll quench you.
It's the quenchiest.
It's the quenchiest, yeah. Like, just things like that. Like, that's just, it's hilarious, and it's really fun to watch, and, like, I don't know, I just really liked it, and pretty much everybody I know that has watched it likes it, so...
Cool.
I think it's like one of the best shows ever.
You
Right.
watched it how many times?
At least 7 times over
Nice.
every episode.
Yep.
And it's because you can see it in different point of views from like everywhere, and that's kind of what it brings in the different points. You can see it from different perspectives, and it can still be an enjoyable show, no matter what you see it as.
Like, if you could pick one thing out of the show, that's the only thing that's left, what would it be?
How they transform the characters.
What are we talking about?
We're talking about Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Not the blue people.
Overall, what you liked conceptually, etc.
What's your favorite part of it?
We're going to binge watch this.
I'd say my favorite character was the blind earthbender. I forgot her name. Toph. But my favorite element was the waterbending, and I really enjoyed the blood bending over.
What does this say about you?
Well, he is the quiet one.
Yes.
But yeah, so yeah,
Overall, worth watching?
yes.
Nice.
My overall, I echo Guinevere on my overall favorite part being how they developed the characters. There were no absolutes. Well, there were some absolutes in this series. We had the Fire Lord. He was an absolute villain. There was nothing redemptive about him. And his psychotic daughter, Azula, was also an absolute villain. There was nothing... But in all honesty...
She was an absolute villain because of her circumstances. It wasn't that she was an absolute villain for being an absolute villain.
Yes.
She did have childhood issues that
Yeah.
caused it.
And which is, they also go into that. And so neither of them were like a villain for being a villain's sake. They had a screwed up family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And miraculously, the Fire Lord's wife wasn't screwed up. Interestingly enough, she was the daughter of Avatar Roku.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And their son, fortunately, had the influence of his uncle to save him from that family drama. But the way they developed those characters, besides the Fire Lord and his daughter, so Ozai and Azula were the villains, the way they developed all of these characters was so progressive and in a good pace.
Yeah.
Nothing was rushed. Yeah. I love the concept of the elements where, especially when Aang is learning all these things, it's like even all the elements are connected and blah 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 blah. For my own writings, I took a lot of inspiration from this series. In my novel, it's a fantasy novel. There is elemental magic to an extent. I mean, they're not like moving monoliths, but
Right.
they can control things like water. I'm pretty sure in every magical anything we watch or read, somebody is shooting fire out of their hands.
Right.
Or out of a wand. So yeah, those things happen in my book, and they all have a center. They all have something that they come from.
Yeah.
Like for instance, if the magician in my story isn't careful, they will do a lot of harm to themselves using flame magic, because they have to learn its source, and it can't come from inside them, or they get hurt.
Right. And one of the things in Manual of Miscellaneous Magics, we'll end up talking about this. If you're using fire, it's got to consume something.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't tell it what to consume, it will consume you.
Yes. But, I mean, even down to the glowing eyes that they use in Avatar, I honestly I didn't steal it, so there's no plagiarism here, but it definitely inspired me for my story where, I mean, yes, their eyes glow when they're at the peak of their magic momentarily. Mm-hmm. And so mainly because that's that differentiation. So they're the regular character, now they're something else. But yeah, I thought it was really well received. It was definitely targeted toward a certain age group, teenagers in particular, but hey, none of us are teenagers anymore. Well, one of us is, but most of us are no longer teenagers,
reveal who it is.
And we all still love the show and will watch it anytime.
So overall, thought it was a great concept.
Mhm.
Loved it. I would definitely recommend it to friends who haven't seen it, which surprises me if no one hasn't seen it.
I haven't seen it.
Yet.
I've seen the movie, and from what I've heard is that nothing is the same. So.
And then based off the people who have seen it, most people like it. There's a few people who I've heard don't, but to each their own.
Yeah.
I don't think I can pick one favorite part, but I have a favorite character, which is Uncle Iroh,
Yeah.
because he's
Love him.
funny. He's got all these like smooth pickup lines on women, and then
He does.
his obsession with tea, and then just how much of an influence he is on Zuko, which is why one of my favorite parts of the show also is the characterization of Zuko himself.
Mm-hmm.
His development, because he goes from this
Brat.
trying to gain redemption with his father to being officially outcast and trying to capture the Avatar, to mainly get back in his dad's grace, to why don't I just join his side? Because he actually ends up losing his firebending and having to train alongside Aang. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. It becomes more of a... He still regains his honor, but in the right way.
To the right person.
And one last thing for me, you mentioned Iroh's love of tea. I love how they bring that cultural element in.
Yes.
Because it is very Asian. It's Asian based.
Yep.
I love how they bring all these cultural elements in.
Yes.
Cool. All right. Well, Avatar: Last Airbender. I'm going to watch it at some point. 'Cause
Yay.
It sounds really good. We're gonna go ahead and close up.
Until next time,
Yes.
live long and prosper.
I don't think we can use that.
Plagiarism. Edit it out.
No, I'm pretty sure that's become a cultural
It
norm,
is.
which we talked about.
Live a timely life.
Yes.
Live a timely life.
Live long. And prosper.